Adar, thank you very much. Welcome to the ET Lounge. This is the first time we are doing this. We plan to double down as we go ahead. This has been an experiment, but thank you very much for coming, taking time out and coming here.
Pleasure to be here and talk to you.
So to start with, we meet on a day when Mr. Trump has done what he said he would, which is pull out of the World Health Organization, WHO. What do you make of it? Does it anyway impact the overall global health sector and Serum in particular?
Well, of course, you can imagine there are alarm bells going
all over the world.
all over. And because you see a multilateral organization like WHO plays a very critical role in transnational standards and health standards, not just for vaccines, but for medicine and so many other things. Now, of course, they must be deciding what to do and perhaps raise funds from other countries and do all of that. But these are very critical programs globally that health systems, testing, surveillance, research, so many things that WHO does. And I think, look, whatever views the president has on WHO is of course his views. But I think this has certainly sent a shock to the system, and let's see what happens. But certainly it could slow down a few things that are going on in the world. My concerns, I hope it doesn't happen, that vaccine pre-qualifications and getting vaccines approved globally, because WHO is that global standard that most countries go by. This doesn't result in delays in getting new vaccines approved. Like for example, we recently got our malaria vaccine for the African continent approved by the WHO, and as a result, a lot of these countries will be able to access this vaccine at a very low price, and hopefully will save a lot of lives. So things like this shouldn't get backtracked, and I'm sure the WHO has made plans to ensure that the most critical things still go on. But let's wait and see. It's early days. It's only been a few hours. Let's see what happens.
Right. Now, talking about vaccines on a larger picture, I think it was in this very particular forum, which is the WEF forum in Davos, where you had placed demands for what you said, vaccine equity. That, why should middle or lower income economies or countries face the kind of, multiple regulatory clearances vis-a-vis patents? And what's the progress so far? I'm sure this was something that big pharma companies would not have, liked someone talk about it like that. But your dad have always been champions for this cause. What's, since you made those observations and remarks, what's been the progress on the ground?
Well, again, something relating to the WHO, that they've been working on this thing called the Pandemic Accords, which goes towards bringing vaccine equity, not just during a pandemic, but perhaps during other times where, registering and getting vaccines approved and other medicines approved, across the board, so that companies don't have to go to every individual country to get that done, because that takes time, that involves costs, various other things. So there has been progress on that. It's still always good to have one multilateral organization like the WHO to take the lead on that. We have focused on, pricing our vaccines very, very low to maximize the access to the poorest nations in the world. And that's why, to reach the maximum number of children and adults to get them vaccinated. We continue to do that, and I don't see that slowing down. That's in fact, doing quite well after COVID. And whether it's on testing, whether it's on surveillance, all of that. So we're in a far better place than we were during COVID.
So there has been progress since you. Okay, that's good. Now, Serum has made it very clear that you would primarily want to stay focused on vaccines. So if you could just talk us through what are the next big projects for the company in terms of next generation vaccines.
Well, ever since COVID, we've invested $2 billion in capex, in research and clinical trials to get new vaccines. And as a result, we've built facilities and are on the verge of licensing a bunch of vaccines. For example, the HPV and malaria vaccines are already licensed. We're looking at chikungunya and monkeypox in a year and a half's time. We're looking at dengue vaccine in about 2.5, maybe 3 years' time. A lot of these mosquito-borne diseases that spread, in India, South America, Asia, these sort of areas. A yellow fever vaccine as well. This is another one. So we're focusing, as you said, on vaccines rather than other pharmaceutical drugs and monoclonals and other things at the moment. Most of our capital and our profits just go back into building capex in India, and now we've got 2 campuses in India. And our capacity is around 4 billion doses annually. Of course, that's not being utilized. We're only at a $2 billion dose capacity utilization.
Right.
So let's see, with all these new vaccines coming about, that capacity will be used up because, after COVID, there was a lot of empty capacity.
Yeah.
So we just retweaked those equipments and things and made some more investments. And, the challenge still lies in getting clinical trials being done, quickly, because during COVID, that was happening very fast. Trials were getting done very quickly. But now we're back to the usual way where, it does take time to get those results. So we have to be patient, and this next 3-4 years, you'll see so many more vaccines being licensed.
Right. But this 2 billion capex, it's a significant sum that has already gone in. Does that mean the capex cycle is over, or you keep on incrementally?
This has been over the last, I would say, 5 years.
Yeah.
Ever since let's say 2020.
Right.
The majority of this was invested during the pandemic and a little bit more after. I would say now most of our funds will go towards funding the clinical trials of these vaccines because, you have to do trials in India, Africa, so many other areas. The capex cycle, I wouldn't say is over, but I would say 80% of that is done. And then maybe after another few years, we may have to again put in another big investment, to build more facilities for new technologies and messenger RNA. And, we're even looking at giving vaccines instead of needles through other devices, including patches. Now, that's going to take 3 or 4 years to develop. But, this is very good because if you're talking about big campaigns and reaching a lot of people in outbreaks or a pandemic even, you don't need a trained healthcare professional to give it. You just put the patch on like you have in, whether it's an insulin or other things, and then that administers the vaccine. Okay. So, these are some of the new technologies, and we're working on AI also. So we're investing there to be able to predict what kind of formulations or speed up clinical trials in a way that you save a lot of time and costs. So that will be very good for the vaccine and pharmaceutical industry. And I've got some meetings here lined up to talk to some people who are doing that. Of course, with the challenge there is that regulators around the world have to, acknowledge and agree with what the AI simulations have predicted and said is correct and will result in an effective vaccine. So, there has to be some acknowledgement there. And because, if a regulator doesn't approve your vaccine based on an AI tool, then you have to still stick to completing all the traditional ways of completing your trials and research. So in research and clinical trials, I think AI has an important role, in our industry.
So typically, just to understand, for these kind of initiatives, what kind of investments are required?
Well, it depends. It could be about $100 million to begin with, where you invest in the or co-invest with the partner to do that and develop a platform which can simulate these things, and it will vary from vaccines to vaccines. So we haven't invested it yet, but we have plans to do that over the coming years. Okay.
And as always, you don't want to onboard a partner for any particular project or any particular venture.
We do. Like, for example, Bill Gates and his foundation have funded a lot of our trials, and we've co-developed some of these vaccines that way. in terms of funding and other things. And in return, we've offered these vaccines at a very, very low price, which is, been a win-win for a lot of the developing world countries. Look, depending on what the project is or whatever, we're always happy to have partners with us to, share the risk. And if we want to have 3-4 vaccines rolling out quickly, then we can't fund everything on our own. So you have to bring in partners.
Right. Now, you were close to getting approval for your advanced BCG vaccine from the US FDA, if I'm not mistaken. What's the update? If you could share some details.
I think that should happen in a few months. So, that's on track.
Okay.
Again, now with the US policies, I don't know how the uptake of vaccines going from other countries to the US is going to happen. Again, very early days. They've just sort of taken charge. So we'll have some meetings in the US, and I think we can talk about it a bit later. Once I know a bit more.
So the price, quantity for supply, all that has not been found.
We have no idea at the moment. It's still very early days.
Okay. So you talked about the 2 major launches, the malaria one, for example, for Africa. So are you looking at the WHO pre-qualification for the HPV vaccine in particular?
Absolutely.
And any update on that?
Yeah. So we should be pre-qualified in 2026.
Okay.
By the WHO, if everything goes well, and we're on track for that, because after that you can export these vaccines to other countries. This year and part of next year will be focused on trying to start supplying to the Indian government.
Right.
We've already launched this vaccine to prevent cervical cancer in women, as you know. Very important for young girls to take this in India in the private market. So we'll see how that rollout also takes place. The Indian government is very eager to, promote this and get this out into girls, because they understand, and with the Prime Minister Modi's vision of protecting girls and doing more for women is a welcome initiative, and I think everyone's looking forward to that.
But what's the update on that in the cervical cancer vaccine, for example? Because there were plans to sell it through the National Immunization Program.
Yes, so that'll happen this year. This year
it's
just being planned out, because when you roll out a new vaccine, the states have to be prepared to take it. So some states will start first. There'll be pilot areas or certain areas of the state which will start first. You don't roll out a vaccine completely, nationwide like that. So you do it in phases.
So we're looking at what, calendar 2025? Or?
Yes. So by the end of this year, hopefully we should have the National Immunization Program taking the vaccine and rolling it out. And, the volumes will pick up beyond, say, 40, 50, 60 million doses in 26, as I mentioned. So we just have to scale that up.
Right. Now, it's not just COVID. The scare of, the virus scare keeps coming back, whether, as you said, chikungunya. Now, again, there's a scare a few days back about the HPV. What is it?
I know what you're talking about.
So, the
pneumonia.
The pneumonia, Now, you had the pandemic factory that was being planned. Is it ready? Because the whole idea was to churn vaccines in a record time.
So that's the facility that's added 2 billion doses to our capacity. And, God forbid there's another pandemic. But in the meanwhile, we're using those facilities to make all these other vaccines.
Right.
India is far more self-reliant now, even more than it already was during the pandemic, because not only Serum, but other manufacturers have also got and built and invested in more capacity. Our testing and surveillance infrastructure is also very good now. In fact, that's where you're seeing, I don't know if you saw the reports, but this pneumonia virus, or it's been around for years. But, because of our, it was the same even when monkeypox cases were detected. Earlier, we didn't have the tools and systems to detect it. So now, when some of these things, they will be obviously highlighted, and rightly so. So we're at a state of alertness. That of course there's nothing to worry about now, but at least what's circulating, what to do. You have ways of testing. You can develop testing kits very quickly. So all that infrastructure that was built and capability that was built both in India and across the globe after COVID is there very much so. So I think we're all that much more prepared in case something else happens.
And you gave a roadmap of the next few years in terms of the new vaccines, which are at various stages of coming to the market. Predominantly India, or it's going to be India and the world and like a 50-50 split?
No. Every vaccine strategy that we look at before getting into a vaccine, it has to have a global demand.
Correct.
Because if it doesn't, we can't, the volumes and economies of scale don't justify it, and then it's a chicken or the egg, so you
Correct.
can't then bring the prices down.
Yeah.
If you make 20-30 million doses of a vaccine, if some vaccines are required only for certain regions or a country or two, then it's not economically viable or sustainable.
Correct.
So all of these vaccines, they always start off in India, and after protecting the national population and serving our nation's needs, then we go on to exporting it.
Right. Now, Serum also had a plan to make biosimilars of Keytruda with an alliance with an Australian company.
No, well, right now we're just focusing on vaccines.
Okay, so that has been shelved for the moment.
Well, I mean, let's see.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, what's been or what is your M&A strategy in terms of what kind of technologies that make you interested? Are you looking at therapeutic vaccines, biologics, or you've also invested in the mRNA platform?
Yes.
So
these are all that we've got now, a whole suite of different technologies and capabilities: viral vectors, subunit proteins, live attenuated vaccines, and now messenger RNA as well. So it all depends where the trend goes. If certain diseases can be tackled using, it depends. Not every disease can. You can't make a vaccine for certain diseases using certain technologies, or it's not efficient. So we'll find the right one to do it. The bottom line is we have that capability across the board with all these different platforms. But in terms of M&A, we prefer partnering to share the risk and working with partners to co-develop or develop these vaccines, and then make the process very efficient in terms of manufacturing, so that you can be world leaders. In terms of investments and M&As, we do that outside of Serum.
Right.
Whether it's in the financial services business, or some of the other private equity investments we've made. And every 5 or 6 years, I like to churn that portfolio. Like for example, we've got the insurance company, our finance company. We've got a bunch of investments in retail and early startups. So every 5 or 6 years, we look for an exit, and just now we recently tied up with TPG
for your packaging.
Yes, for
short,
that one. Short Poonawalla, and we're doing something on an insurance company also, which will come into public domain soon. So
okay.
In Serum we don't do a lot of M&As because we don't raise capital. We don't want to merge with other entities and complicate the thing. It's very important for us to keep our independence.
Correct.
Because with that, you have independent and the freedom to make your own decisions. You're not beholden to stakeholders and investors, whereby, if Serum was listed, I wouldn't be able to make half the decisions that I do in terms of taking risks or, building capacity ahead of time and doing all these sort of things.
With the equity markets where they are, rather the IPO markets, there is no plan to revise the stated position that Serum will?
No, I mean, you never say never, but at the moment there's really no need. As I said, you'd lose your freedom to operate and your independence. You'd have to make decisions in a very different way.
Correct. Why I've also asked you about the M&A is because every so often, and I'm sure you face this quite a lot, whether it's a Cipla, whether it's a Biocon, it all keeps coming back. The natural home or the eventual home for all these companies seems to be Serum.
No, nothing like that. There were talks, which we had earlier and all that. With Biocon, we've just made an investment in Biocon Biologics. It's a great company that Kiran and her team have built, and there's no further strategic thinking on that. It's just
I guess in both, because there are possibly succession issues? I mean, there's always this question after Kiran.
So perhaps that's why the media may speculate from that angle. But they haven't, at least to me, mentioned any of that.
Okay. But coming to the packaging company, it's such a profitable venture. Why bring on board a private equity? What do they add to the table?
Well, no, we're just exiting in the sense that we've sold 35%. And the balance we'll exit in an IPO in 2 years' time.
Right.
So, we'd invested during the pandemic because at that time it was a very strategic investment where we wanted control on our supply chain, etc. And we're still their largest customer and will continue to be. But, I like to redeploy my capital. As I said, I like to churn my capital from my investments in privately listed companies to then deploy those resources in we could do it in green energy, we could invest in data centers, we could invest in so many other areas to hedge our financial risks and portfolios. With privately limited companies, if you don't have a plan, either for an IPO or a way to partner and exit, then you might get stuck. And then you don't want to be in a situation where you have a lot of investments which are marked up, but then you want liquidity also.
Right.
And a lot of the liquidity I get from all of these investments, we're going to put straight into Serum to keep building our pipeline and other things. So Serum always needs a lot of capital.
Right.
In fact, if I had an extra $1 billion or $2 dollars, I could have spent that and deployed that in so many other things that I want to do. So there's a huge unmet need there.
Correct. No, you've vaccines to start with, but then financial services, real estate, packaging, and within financial services, insurance, the NBFC and the other pieces, real estate I talked about, diagnostics, clean energy. What next is now the strategic investment that you made with the alliance with Karan. What else is Mr. Adar Poonawalla?
No. So one doesn't want to get too diluted and distracted. I think the investment with Dharma was more on passion and having the power of storytelling is always can be very influential, and we've always been touched one way or another with films, since way back as we can remember as children. And we'll see how to use that both internationally and domestically, whether it's for our group companies or for whatever else we want, and we'll see. But we're still strategizing how to use that. But and we also have plans to build vertically. Our own music label, our own distribution in Dharma, and so many other things. So we don't want to focus just on films. Of course, that will be the main essence and thing around it. So we have some plans there also, but nothing more in the media and entertainment space at the moment. I think our focus will remain on financial services and Serum, as business entities. And I think that's it's important to be focused. A lot of groups which kind of diversify too much.
Yeah, they get diluted.
Beyond your core competence.
The attention gets...
And we don't want to invest in anything in terms of control.
Yeah.
We may make investments where we believe in those promoters and entrepreneurs and back them with their vision. But anything where we take a substantial stake has to be where we have our core competence. And if I don't feel confident that we have that, then we don't want to get into that.
The green energy, venture that you backed is...
That's very small.
Got to do with ESG?
Well, I'll tell you what they're doing. They've got some contracts now to produce ammonia, and you've got electrolyzers and fuel cells that they make. So it'll be part of the electric and hydrogen kind of transition, whether it's in mobility or even in captive use for industry and things. And it's still very early stages. It's H2E, and I've invested 50% along with the promoter and partner CEO who runs it, Siddharth. He's here also.
Oh, okay.
And but that was again just an investment. We're not going to go big into green energy. I think there are a lot of great big groups looking at that.
Yeah.
We don't have the competence or the bandwidth to do that or the capital. So it's just a small investment.
You've also been very passionate about hospitality, real estate. I mean, the
Yes.
Pune, the hotel, is there any interest or is there any inclination to make bets overseas?
Yes, we looked at some hotels overseas and in India, but the valuations were very high, so we've left it. But if there's some good hotel chains, we may look at making some investments there. We've always liked that space, as long as the valuation is not. The reason why we didn't go ahead at the moment is because the interest rates are so high. So, typically speaking, if you look at putting down half the capital and leveraging half, today, even in the US or in Europe, if you were to borrow, it's at 6-7% because you were getting 4-5% fixed deposit. Back in the day, it was 2%, so you'd get money at 1.5-2%. 1.5 over LIBOR or 2 over LIBOR. These hotels typically yield, at least good 5-star groups and hotels yield 3 or 4%. So if you were to look at that in absolute terms, every year on an annual basis, you don't want to go out of pocket just to fund the operations of the hotel. You want the EBITDA of a hotel to be able to service at least 50% on acquisition on the debt. So if the valuation is beyond that, then it doesn't make sense.
Makes sense. Okay.
You only make real money, when you sell a hotel asset or a chain or a brand or whatever. Annually, it doesn't, throw up a lot of capital.
Correct.
So again, doing a leveraged buy or 50-50 kind of thing doesn't make sense. So let the interest rates cool off, which I think with the, multiple wars and things going on and supply chain inflations and so many other factors leading to interest rates being where they are, I think when they cool off, we can relook at that space also.
Yeah, but
at the moment, it's just the Ritz-Carlton in India in partnership with my friend Atul that we did that.
Yeah.
It's part of a real estate complex and other real estate projects that we do.
Because you made an investment recently in London, it's a residential here for your family.
It's a company guest house.
There was also, years ago you had, when the Grosvenor Hotel was coming up for sale, Mr. Subrata Roy's, there was a lot. You had bid, and I think the Chinese had overbid at that point in time and outbidded you. It's now, I think, with the Qataris, and the Qataris are again looking for a partner. And again, there's a lot of speculation that others may look into it.
We had looked at it, but right now we're not proceeding with that deal at the moment.
Okay. Is there any white space left in the financial services portfolio?
In what sense?
In the sense that which you think Poonawalla Finance hasn't covered yet.
Yes.
And you would like to.
Yes. So we're going to add a lot of verticals, and I'll let my CEO Arvind Kapil, from HDFC, who has joined us recently, talk about that more. But we want to go into gold loans, more into LAP, more into secured lending. We've been doing a lot of retail unsecured lending, so we want to shift and pivot to more of that. So again, in line with what RBI and others, and just the general trend is going at. Housing, so many things like that, so that you have different, sometimes, one particular vertical sees stress.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be overly concentrated and exposed to one area. So, you're going to see that being built out over the next 1 or 2 years. And right now there's heavy OPEX for building out and incubating these businesses. Within FinCorp, and we're already at a 30,000 crore AUM. In 5 to 7 years, I'm hopeful that we'll be at least 100,000 crores of AUM. And so we want to just calibrate our risk accordingly and go sensibly and slowly.
And insurance is the other area.
That's general and health insurance. It's not life. It's Magma HDI. That's the company. It's privately listed. We may look at a stake sale there, and there's some discussions going on around that, which I don't want to discuss right now. But again, so we want to focus on our financial services and Serum, and the other things we had a housing company, for example, which we sold off to TPG a year and a half ago also. So I want to be very focused in what we are doing, and anything that is not core or not in our a core strategy. I just, give it to other partners and investors to take over.
Because diagnostics was something that everyone thought you would really.
Well, we've got My Labs.
Correct.
We own 50%
Yeah.
in that. We may bring in an investor there to grow that further. I like that space. It's doing well. They
A financial partner or?
It could be a strategic also, could bring in more technology or different things from the US. They're very good. My Labs is very good at, rapid antigen tests and other testing kits. And we've developed machines where, instead of using a lab, a room this size to do all your testing, you can do it in a machine this big. So, and very quickly.
Yeah.
Everyone wants test results very fast. As soon as you give a blood sample or a
Yeah,
swab, test
Jaldi
kab aa raha hai,
karo.
jaldi karo. So, so we're moving in that direction, and
Right.
they're doing well also.
Adar, thank you so very much. Always
Pleasure.
a pleasure to talk to
Pleasure.
you. And great plans and all the best.
Thank you so much.